They failed to show up when I crumpled to the ground at work. I awoke in the ICU, solitude enveloping me, as my sister shared a photo, family day without the drama. 4 days passed, still tethered to machines, when my phone illuminated with 74 missed calls and a message from my dad. "We need you." Answer immediately. In that instant, it dawned on me, they had never truly cared. What transpired following that moment? They were completely unprepared for what was about to unfold. Before we embark on this journey, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts, for this tale transcends mere family ties. It is a narrative of liberation and self-discovery. It all began on that fateful Monday afternoon, when I believed I could endure the headaches, the dizziness, the constriction in my chest, until, suddenly, everything faded to black. Upon my collapse at work, the doctors reached out to my parents. They did not arrive. In lieu of anything else, my sister chose to tag me in a photograph. A day with family, free from the theatrics. I remained silent. Days later, still frail and tethered to machines, I discovered 74 missed calls and a message from my father. "Your presence is essential to us. Respond without delay." Without a moment's hesitation, for weeks, an unsettling sensation lingered within me. Yet I persevered as I always had. It was not the first instance in which I had overlooked the warnings: headaches, dizziness, the sporadic constriction in my chest, because, in all honesty, I believed I could not afford to pause. Not when I was assisting with my mother's car payment, nor when my sister Amanda was messaging me every couple of days requesting assistance. A brief loan, if you will, and certainly not when my father continued to act as if his overdue mortgage payment was somehow my obligation. That's the aspect that eludes many. They gaze upon the seemingly flawless family posts and assume that all is well. They remain unaware of the experience of growing up as the sole son in a household where one is perpetually cast in the role of a background character. My sisters, Amanda and Emily, could total a car and somehow still receive accolades for gaining a valuable lesson. I once received a statewide engineering award, and my mother's sole reaction was a casual, "Oh cool, have you expressed your gratitude to your teacher?" I found myself no longer seeking acknowledgement. I simply yearned for a return of something lost, perhaps a hint of appreciation. However, that was not destined to be. I dedicated my efforts to the task at hand. I toiled through weekends, shouldered expenses that were not mine to bear, and reassured myself that it was all acceptable. It was not until that fateful Monday afternoon, seated at my desk, I found myself immersed in the intricate task of preparing a presentation for a significant client. I recall rising to retrieve a folder from the printer. And then, silence enveloped me. Only black. The sound of beeping roused me from slumber. Chilling illumination. Wires clinging to my chest. A nurse meticulously adjusting the drip, ensuring every drop counts. It felt like a dream. It's akin to those fleeting instances that seem to belong solely to the realm of cinema. Yet, it was undeniably real. It was neither a panic attack nor dehydration. Nor was it simply exhaustion. The experience unfolded as a dramatic cardiac episode. The doctor remarked that the situation could have escalated had I not collapsed at that very moment in the office. A call to 911 was made without delay. It was my coworkers who kept the air in my lungs, the very essence of my existence. The hospital staff exhibited remarkable dedication and care, compassionate, expert. As the hours slipped by and the realization dawned upon them that I lay alone at my bedside, they informed me that they had already reached out to my emergency contacts, my parents. I lingered in anticipation. For 2 long days, I remained in anticipation. Silence prevails. No texts. No visitors. Silence reigns, devoid of any calls. On the 3rd day, I stirred from my nap and reached for my phone, wondering if perhaps the signal had faltered. Only a single notification appeared. An Instagram tag. Amanda was the sender. A photograph captures her, Emily, and our parents, all beaming, gathered around the picnic table by the lake. My mother had prepared her renowned deviled eggs. The words struck me with greater force than the fall itself ever could. A day with family, free from the theatrics. Indeed, I was tagged, as if I were merely a punchline in a private jest. As if I wasn't lying there, half dead in a hospital bed, while they reveled over potato salad. I chose not to respond. I gazed at the screen until it faded into darkness. On that day, something broke within me, not with a loud, furious crash, but rather in a hushed, definitive manner. A door shuts firmly, its finality echoing with a resolute silence, as if it harbors no desire to ever part again. I continued to find my way back. Gradually, the physicians were closely observing my heart and conducting a series of tests. I seldom uttered a word unless it was absolutely necessary. Yet, not a whisper has reached me from my family. It was not until 4 days had passed. Upon awakening, I found myself confronted with a staggering 74 missed calls. A message from my father. Your presence is essential to us. Respond without delay. There are no regrets. No. How are you? Only those words. Uncertainty lingered in my mind. Yet I moved forward without a moment's pause. I propped myself up, feeling frail and tethered to the beeping machines. And without a moment's hesitation, I redialed. Yet, not for them. I reached out to another person. For what felt like an eternity, I found myself fixated on the message from my father. Your presence is essential to us. Respond without delay. 4 days have passed in silence. 74 missed calls. Yet that was their opening statement. Not inquiring about your well-being. Are you not okay? I felt no sense of panic. There was an absence of sensation within me. It was a profound stillness that took the place of any emotion that once surged in moments like these. In that moment, a number surfaced in my mind. A figure that had long since faded from my memory. Once, I had preserved it under a name I never chose to erase. Mr. Harrison. It had been months since I last reached out to him. Not due to any distance between us, but rather an understanding of his sentiments towards the rest of the family. I had found myself too ashamed to acknowledge that he was indeed correct. Once more, yet, on that particular morning, I reached out to him. He answered on the second ring, as if he had been anticipating the call. There was no inquiry into my well-being. I simply inquired about which hospital. That was the moment, without a trace of doubt, without inquiry, and devoid of any veiled hostility. A prompt reply, as if I held significance. It was an emotion I had not experienced in many years. He arrived a full 40 minutes later. In some inexplicable way, it appeared to be unchanged. Yet another familiar windbreaker. The very same watch he had donned since my childhood. The expression on his face suggested that nothing could astonish him any longer. Yet he was perpetually prepared. He entered the room, took a seat, fixed his gaze upon me, and remarked, "So, they finally managed to break you as well, did they?" I refrained from inquiring about the source of his knowledge. I merely inclined my head. He remained by my side throughout the whole day. I had a conversation with my nurse, inquired with genuine curiosity, silently covered the cost of a test that my insurance had denied. Without drawing any attention to it, he then retrieved a tablet and began assisting me in navigating the chaos I had inadvertently created while on autopilot. We examined every detail. I found my name inscribed upon 5 distinct loan agreements, 3 credit cards, 2 utilities, a car insurance policy for a vehicle I never even took for a spin. It had woven itself so intricately into the fabric of my daily life that I remained blissfully unaware of the depths of its deterioration. Whenever they encountered a difficult moment, I was there to intervene, silently, with a sense of inevitability, because I believed that was the essence of family, repairing the gaps without anticipating any return. However, the reality is that they anticipated my involvement, and in moments when I faltered, or found myself unable, I transformed into the very issue at hand. The intrigue and tension abound. I began to understand that they hadn't merely relied on me. They had leaned into me. To them, I was nothing more than a shadow, an absence of identity. I served as a pressure valve, a cash machine, a familial disappointment upon which they could depend, as long as I refrained from bringing to light the debts they held towards me. Mr. Harrison assisted me in crafting a list. Each account, each bond. Thus, we commenced the process of turning them off, one after another. The automatic transfer to Amanda's checking account has been cancelled. She would often declare that she was struggling to make ends meet. Yet, She had taken to the skies and journeyed to Miami 3 times this year, sharing her adventures with the world on each occasion. She was now capable of managing her own bills. What about Emily's rent deposit? Vanished. What about my mom's car insurance? She had the option to reach out to the provider on her own. I have taken the precaution of removing my card information and updating my password. And the loan I co-signed for Amanda, the one she had conveniently ceased to bring up for months, I brought to attention. A fraud report has been filed, not out of a desire to bring about her downfall. Yet, I never consented to remain her perpetual fallback option. I had finished signing documents for those who would not be present for me in my time of need. Lying on a hospital bed, Mr. Harrison remained largely silent, yet occasionally he would emit a soft hum, a sound that conveyed a blend of disappointment and resignation. He was the sole individual who had ever revealed to me the truth. Loyalty is only as robust as the individuals to whom you pledge it. As he departed that evening, the calls had surged, doubling in number. I had to silence my phone. Mom had left voicemails as if she had just learned of the events that transpired. Emily was sending texts in all caps, as if that would compel me to reply more quickly. Amanda had fallen silent, a state that, for her, signaled the brewing of something far more ominous. Suddenly, another message arrived. From Father. This matter demands our utmost attention. Reach out to me at your earliest convenience. All is unraveling. There remains an absence of any reference to the hospital. Not a single word regarding what transpired in my life. Only a sense of panic. Not for myself, but for the awareness they possessed of what lay ahead. The initial domino had tumbled. They remained oblivious to the fact that I was the catalyst behind it all. The fallout began while I remained confined within the hospital's walls. Initially, it began with the voicemails. A dozen, then 2 dozen, and soon enough, there were so many that I ceased to count. I played one on the speaker, curious to discover if anything had shifted. It was my mother. She remarked, "I can't quite grasp what you're attempting to demonstrate. But this certainly isn't the method to achieve it." The tone was indeed present. Do not fear. Not a concern. It was simply a moment of frustration when I discovered the ATM was out of order. Amanda sent a text next. Initially, there were no words, only a screenshot of her checking account. The total stood at $2.09. Subsequently, she continued with, "What on earth is happening? Please rectify this issue." I gazed at the screen, a surge of anger swelling within me for a fleeting moment, before I allowed it to dissipate. It was not a novel experience. The noise had simply intensified. Emily approached it from a new perspective. Her message unfolded with greater length and depth of feeling. She claimed she was unaware of the unfolding drama. She held a deep affection for each of us and yearned for harmony. She concluded with a plea, asking not to be punished for actions she had not committed. It was amusing, given that during our last conversation, she had rolled her eyes at my declaration that I couldn't co-sign another lease. Claimed I was being difficult, then vanished from my life for 3 long months. Yet it was my father who ultimately crossed the threshold. He arrived at my apartment. Mr. Harrison had forewarned me. Earlier, he had caught sight of his car parked outside, its engine quietly humming. I found myself in the midst of recovery, lacking the strength to walk unassisted. Yet, that did not deter him from positioning his vehicle outside, as if he were anticipating the release of a captive. I chose not to reply. As the day wore on, a message arrived. "You stand on the precipice of dismantling all that we have painstakingly constructed. I trust you grasp the harm you are inflicting, all that we have created." The boldness of that sentence brought forth an uncontrollable laugh from deep within me. I revisited the text, ensuring that I hadn't conjured it from mere fantasy. There shall be no expressions of regret. There is no reference to the hospital. There was no regard for the circumstances that had led me to that point. Only dread, a trepidation of relinquishing the power they had clung to for far too long. Then arrived the missive. "Amanda has shared a video online. Silence reigns. Silence prevails. A languid, poignant exploration of my parents' house. Utterly devoid of life. Not merely a vacant space, but an emptiness that resonates. Displaced and devoid, the front stands wide open. The living room laid bare. The dining table vanished. Even the curtains had been removed. The inscription declared, "They seized it all." And can you believe who granted them access? I viewed it a single time. I then launched my finance application. Retrieved the mortgage details. It had failed to meet its obligations. Once more, the equity had been utilized to clear Amanda's credit card debt and to support Emily's entrepreneurial venture in the digital realm. I can't quite recall whether it was a candle company or a clothing boutique. It succumbed to failure within a mere 2 months. Not a single penny had been allocated to the mortgage. Last year, I issued a single warning. If they couldn't handle it more effectively, I would be leaving. They refused to believe me. As I strolled, the bank encroached upon my path. Mr. Harrison stood by as I uncovered the documents. Initially, I remained silent, merely scrolling through the details, revealing the balance, the late fees, the notifications that had eluded my attention, sent directly to my parents' address. He gave a single nod. Subsequently, he placed a handful of calls. One to his attorney, a note to a longtime companion in the realm of estate planning. Then, at last, to his accountant, a figure I had been blissfully unaware of until that very day. The next revelation illuminated everything for me. My family hadn't merely relied on me. They had been subtly investigating my grandfather as well. Particularly following his retirement, Emily had invited him to brunch on 2 occasions. A rarity in her usual routine. Last year, for the first time in a decade, Amanda presented him with a Christmas gift. During one of their conversations, Mom subtly suggested that he ought to begin contemplating what is fair. He foresaw everything that was to unfold, had made the necessary preparations. He had already transferred every asset, every trust, every property he owned, not for the sake of punishment, in order to safeguard it from them. He has now shifted the majority of it under a different name. It belongs to me, not in the form of a present, not in the manner of a reward. Yet, it was precisely because I was the sole individual who had not sought it out. I had demonstrated, with both anguish and clarity, that I could endure without it. I felt no sense of entitlement to even a single penny. And in his words, that rendered me the sole individual deserving of it. On that fateful night, Amanda made her way to the hospital. Her name was absent from the list, resulting in security denying her entry. Yet, I caught a glimpse of her through the window. She moved restlessly across the lot, phone clutched tightly in her hand, engaged in what seemed to be a conversation with someone, most likely Emily. She wore sunglasses, despite the encroaching darkness, as if bracing herself for a confrontation that would never come to pass. She departed after a mere 15 minutes. I concluded that this marked the conclusion of the matter. At last, a concluding message arrived an hour later. If this matter remains unresolved, I assure you, the consequences will weigh heavily on your conscience. No emojis are to be used. There are no hearts, no hashtags are included, only that sentence. Yet, it failed to resonate as she had anticipated. I felt no sense of threat, or fearful, or trapped. For the first time, I experienced a profound emptiness. I ceased my efforts to embody the son, the brother, the one who mends. At this moment, I found myself unencumbered. A soft knock echoed through the hospital room door, breaking the stillness within. I presumed it was a nurse. It was not. A staff member entered, an air of unease about them, and conveyed that a woman downstairs is asserting herself as your medical proxy. She claims to be your sister and insists on speaking with your doctor without delay. My gaze lingered on her, a swirl of confusion settling in my mind. I had not designated any member of my immediate family as an emergency contact. Merely my grandfather. I inquired about the identity of the person. She perused the notes page. I found myself on the brink of laughter. Days had slipped by without a single message from her. I had not yet made a visit. I hadn't even recognized my surroundings as a hospital until I severed her rent assistance. And now, she was attempting to articulate my thoughts. I informed them that no one had the authority. The hospital consented and arranged for security to escort her away, ensuring she did not come close to my room. I assumed it was merely her flair for the theatrical. I admit my mistake. A few hours later, Mr. Harrison entered the room, a manila envelope clutched in his hand. He let it fall onto the bed and settled himself down. Within lay printed screenshots of an email exchange. Amidst my parents and a modest law firm that was unfamiliar to me. They were exploring the possibility of legal guardianship, particularly concerning me. I perused it thrice to ensure my comprehension was thorough. They attempted to assert that I was unwell, mentally unstable, erratic, possibly grappling with post-traumatic stress or a breakdown, and that my recent financial choices reflected a pattern of emotional volatility. Their objective was unmistakable. Should they manage to secure the appointment of someone, ideally my father, as a temporary conservator, they would be able to halt the financial reversals I had already initiated. Reinstate access to accounts, re-establish credit, reclaim your power. They sought to portray me as lacking ability. The very individuals who failed to ascertain my existence just 4 days prior. I lingered in that thought for some time. Mr. Harrison exuded a serene composure. He mentioned that this was not unfamiliar territory for him. Years ago, when my uncle sought to distance himself from the family for reasons akin to these. My parents had entertained the notion as well. It remained stagnant, never progressing beyond its initial state. Yet now, with tangible stakes involved, they were genuinely making an effort. They were not reaching out of concern. They reached out, trapped in a situation they couldn't escape. I fell into silence for the remainder of the day. Not in a melancholic manner, but rather with a sense of purpose. A realization sparked within me. I had devoted my entire existence to the hope that they would awaken. Come to understand the depth of my sacrifices, and perhaps even offer an apology. Yet, they remained in slumber. They endeavored to reshape the narrative, casting me as the antagonist. I crafted a list, each account, every shared resource, and all the payments I meticulously arranged to assist throughout the years. That evening, my lawyer, the one Mr. Harrison had introduced me to, arrived with the paperwork already prepared. The following morning, we proceeded to file a formal cease and desist directed at my sisters and parents, prohibiting them from reaching out to any of my medical professionals or attempting to pose as my medical proxies. A vigilant eye on every financial institution where I had ever shared access with any family member. A limitation imposed on the transfer of property associated with my name. Should anyone attempt to sell or transfer an asset for which I have co-signed, it would instigate a legal freeze. I arranged for my HR department to transfer all direct deposits to a new bank. One that was previously unknown to them. Established under a holding trust set up by my grandfather's estate advisor. It marked the inaugural moment in my existence when I experienced, protected. Then the subsequent blow arrived. Emily shared a captivating video. Her makeup bore the marks of a long day. The lighting cast an unflattering glow, and the camera trembled slightly, creating an effect that was unrefined. It began with her soft sniffling, and culminated in her unwavering gaze directed straight into the lens. She failed to utter my name, yet she declared it was sufficient. Within our family, there exists an individual grappling with a profound darkness. We are making efforts to assist him, yet he responds with aggression, causing harm to others. We cannot bear the thought of losing him. Yet, we cannot continue to allow him to dismantle all that we have created. All that we have created. Once more, the familiar phrase echoed in my mind, as if I had merely stumbled into their realm and extinguished the illumination. The video gained rapid momentum. Comments began to flow from her friends. Messages from cousins I hadn't heard from in years arrived, shrouded in mystery. One of my former colleagues even took the time to reach out, inquiring if all was well. Amanda shared it anew, accompanied by a heart emoji and the heartfelt message, "We're all praying for peace, tranquility." Once they attempted to seize control of my existence, the funds that belonged to me, my well-being, they were not beseeching for tranquility. They hoped I would bend. Yet, I refrained. In its place, I shared a piece of my own creation. Only one photograph. I find myself perched upon the hospital bed, beside my grandfather. Nothing particularly dramatic, short and sweet. At times, silence can embody strength rather than weakness. It is a matter of restraint. Refrain from using hashtags, no tags, without any theatrics. Yet, I was aware that it would eventually reach their ears. Indeed, It came to pass. After the passage of 2 hours, Amanda made the call. I chose to remain silent. Once more, she reached out with a call. Then there was Emily. Then there was my mother. Every call. At last, a concluding message arrived from my father. We never wished for it to reach this point. You are compelling us to undertake actions we never wished to pursue. They remained oblivious. They remained convinced of their dominion. Yet, they remained blissfully unaware of the impending events that loomed on the horizon. 2 days later, the letter arrived, presented with care to the hospital, encased in a pristine white envelope. I opened it with the hope that, perhaps, they were extending a hand with something genuinely human. Rather, it was permissible, a notification regarding the intention to seek emergency conservatorship concerning my person. I perused it twice before uttering a word. They asserted that I was not mentally capable of managing my own finances. My recent, erratic behavior, specifically, the decision to cut them off, served as clear evidence that I was spiraling. The letter referenced emotional distress, an inability to fulfill obligations, and concerns from my immediate family regarding my mental stability after experiencing a cardiac event. They sought to seize it all. In an official capacity, I promptly reached out to my lawyer. He remained unfazed. It was noted that such occurrences are not uncommon in tumultuous families, particularly when an individual dares to disrupt the cycle of reliance. He informed me that they were aiming to submit an emergency petition prior to my court appearance. Should they execute their timing perfectly, and I fail to seize the opportunity to reply, a judge might bestow a temporary grant upon it. Unbeknownst to them, Mr. Harrison and his legal team had already taken decisive action. A response was filed, accompanied by notarized statements from my doctors, affirming my mental stability and full command over my decision-making process. Proof of income, communication logs, and a letter from my employer confirming my voluntary time off while remaining actively employed were submitted. The hearing was called off before it could even find its way onto the court docket. They possessed nothing. Their attorney slipped away silently. He likely came to understand that he had been served a tale of familial woe, and he was wary of the potential repercussions in his professional life. Yet, the smear campaign persisted unabated. Strange messages began to arrive from former acquaintances. A girl I had once dated reached out to me, expressing her sorrow upon learning of my struggles. An email from a former coworker inquired whether I required assistance in regaining my footing. It was in that moment I understood they were attempting to craft a different story altogether, altering the narrative, transforming my time in the hospital into a moment of unraveling, depicting my quietude as evidence of my descent into madness, positioning themselves as the sole benefactors in a quest to offer assistance. It could have succeeded, had they not approached it with such carelessness. Amanda found it impossible to remain silent. Emily found herself captivated by the allure of the attention. She shared yet another video. This moment marks the commencement of complete production. With a gentle glow enveloping the scene, the soft strains of piano music weave through the air, while a delicate filter adds a touch of warmth and intimacy. She spoke of the ways in which mental illness often defies expectations, revealing itself in forms that may surprise us. Some wounds remain unseen, and how she yearned for the return of her brother. She never uttered my name. Yet, she chose not to. Her followers embraced it without hesitation. The comment section overflowed with expressions of sympathy. Words such as, "You are incredibly resilient," "Keeping your family in my thoughts," and "He is fortunate to have you by his side," resonate deeply. In that moment, a single remark transformed the entire landscape. A screenshot surfaced, juxtaposing Amanda's nostalgic caption about a drama-free family day alongside Emily's tearful video. The caption questioned, where was all this concern when he was truly in the hospital? It erupted with a sudden force. Comments have been reversed. Compassion transformed into fury. Individuals began to excavate the depths of Amanda's previous posts, delve into Emily's business accounts, and scrutinize my father's former public-facing role. Their discovery was far from pleasant. Amanda had mentioned me in that Family Day post while I was in the ICU. 2 years prior, Emily had taken to Twitter to express her thoughts on those who feign trauma for personal gain, just a day after the doctors reached out to her regarding my collapse. My mom shared a photo from a birthday dinner. Everything came back to the surface. Samantha, a long-lost friend from high school, unexpectedly reconnected with me after all these years. She mentioned that she is currently engaged in the media industry. She recalled the peculiar dynamics of my family during those times. How dissonant it always felt, even in our teenage years. She remarked that the internet would permit the deceit to travel only a limited distance. Yet it did not. Inquiries of genuine substance began to emerge. Emily's charming online boutique, subjected to a barrage of negative reviews. Clients seeking reimbursements. Influencers are subtly excluding her from collaborations. Amanda's sponsorships disappeared in a matter of days. A brand she had collaborated with chose to unfollow her following their apology post in which they had tagged her. Even my father's place of employment was drawn into the fray. During a meeting, one of his clients referenced the viral threads they had come across. He became defensive. The HR department has been informed. As the week drew to a close, he found himself placed on leave. At that moment, they released him completely. The foundation they had constructed, resting precariously on deceit and a sense of superiority, was disintegrating before their very eyes. It was then that my mother chose to speak up at last. She dispatched a solitary message. Kindly, may we engage in a conversation? There shall be no guilt trip. There is no defense, only those 5 words. My gaze lingered on it for what felt like an eternity. I found no sense of fulfillment. Not quite. What I experienced was a sense of distance. The words seemed to echo from a past life, one that has since faded into oblivion. I chose not to respond. I opted to open my notes app instead. I began to enumerate the items that remained to be trimmed, terminated, and concluded. They had, at last, crossed the line, not merely with me, but with the narrative they sought to present to the world at large. Yet, they remained oblivious to the singular truth they had never taken the time to contemplate. I felt no anger. I had reached my limit. I assumed they would relent following the unsuccessful attempt at conservatorship. In the wake of the public backlash, following the loss of employment, sponsorships, and the final remnants of their credibility. Yet, I ought to have been more discerning. Self-serving individuals refuse to yield. They evolve. Having recently emerged from the confines of the hospital, I found myself stepping into a world that felt both familiar and foreign. Though still frail, I find myself capable of walking unaided. Mr. Harrison arrived to collect me, offering a drink as he did so, and informed me that we were bound for his residence for a few days. I accepted that without any reservations. Returning to my apartment was the last thing I desired. It remained uncomfortably near to them. As we journeyed toward his abode, my phone vibrated with an unexpected alert. An unfamiliar number appeared on the screen. It would be wonderful if you could visit the house. It is imperative that we engage in a conversation. With great urgency. It was Emily. I removed it without offering a response. 2 hours later, the phone rang, and it was Samantha on the other end. Her voice cut through the air, filled with a sense of urgency. She suggested that I take a look at Facebook. Something had been posted by them. Amanda, Emily, and my mother, all gathered before the weathered facade of the old house. A U-Haul truck loomed behind them. My father, positioned to the side, cradling a box. They appeared utterly shattered. Faux tears, soiled sweatshirts. Amanda penned the caption, "The pain of losing everything is profound, particularly when it stems from the betrayal of your own kin. Yet, we extend our forgiveness to him. He remains our brother. Our only desire is for him to return home, before the moment slips away." The comments resembled a battlefield. Half were unfamiliar faces extending their hands in solidarity. The remaining individuals were those who challenged them. It was only upon glimpsing the final image in the post that my indifference began to wane. A cherished childhood photograph, cradled gently in Emily's hands. Inscribed below, "A room awaits your arrival. Family endures through all time." I found myself caught in a whirlwind of emotions, unsure if I should feel anger or simply a deep sense of disturbance. It seemed as though emotions were being held hostage, a digital spectacle crafted to portray me as the antagonist, all the while casting themselves as the aggrieved, eager to embrace my return. However, the most surprising revelation unfolded the following day. A letter arrived in the mail, bearing the official seal of the county clerk's office. Within lay a will penned by hand. It did not originate from my grandfather. From my father. A fresh edition. The document was composed in the wake of their unsuccessful attempt at conservatorship. It delineated his assets, which, in a twist of fate, had dwindled to a mere handful, and declared that upon his departure from this world, all would be bequeathed to the family members who upheld their bond. And then, in unsteady script, Michael finds himself estranged from his inheritance, awaiting the day he mends the rift with his family and seeks reconciliation. The paper held my gaze for what felt like an eternity. In that moment, laughter escaped me, not due to any desire for something from him. I did not partake in that endeavor. Yet, the concluding act, the ultimate gesture, remained precisely as it had eternally been. A snare, a last effort to draw me once more into the web they have woven. The communication was unmistakable, conform to the order, or face obliteration. Yet, they overlooked a crucial detail. I longed for oblivion. I instructed my lawyer to dispatch a letter in response. The document encompassed a legal waiver relinquishing any claim to the estate, a permanent notice prohibiting contact, and a signed agreement that disqualified them as emergency contacts or next of kin for any medical or legal matters pertaining to me. It was straightforward, unambiguous. Concluding, they attempted to ensnare me with guilt, with the allure of social media, with the temptation of wealth, and ultimately with the promise of legacy. I opted for tranquility instead. 2 weeks later, Mr. Harrison and I departed for a new state. He expressed a desire to behold the mountains once more. A quaint cabin was acquired by us, nestled just beyond the borders of a serene town. I embraced a remote position, reduced my working hours, and rekindled my passion for reading. Inhale, exhale, a rhythm restored. From time to time, an echo from the past attempts to make contact. A relative by blood, a former neighbor from days gone by. A curious soul pondering the true events that unfolded. I refrain from providing explanations. Amanda, Emily, and my parents possess a remarkable talent for weaving narratives. Narratives in which they perpetually find themselves in pain. Perpetually the ones forsaken. Forever the ones abandoned by a heartless and tormented soul. Allow them to embrace their narrative. The truth resides within me. What of peace, serenity surpasses the fleeting affection of those who cherish you solely for your utility.